my name is Corinne Gregory, and I will be going over the menu from Flatiron Kitchen and Tap House in Davidson, North Carolina, and pairing each appetizer and entree with wine. For the bruschetta appetizer with the smoked salmon, white truffle aioli, and microgreens, I would pair this with a Sauv Blanc or rosé, specifically because of the smoked salmon that comes on the bruschetta. Since smoked salmon has an assertive flavor and oily texture, it definitely would benefit from pairing with a subtle, crisp kind of wine with enough acidity to cut through the fats. And Sauv Blanc works particularly well as it's really crisp and dry flavor and acidity are able to come through with the smokiness of the fish. Also, a bold and crisp rosé is a good choice as the characteristics of rosé wine are very dry and fruity and has just enough acidity to match the smokiness of the salmon and just complement the freshness of the microgreens in the bruschetta. Specifically, I would recommend the Greystone Sauv Blanc from North Canterbury in New Zealand from 2019. And for the rosé, the Pasquier des Vins Côtes de Provence rosé. Those would both be great wines to pair with this bruschetta. For the flash fried Gulf oysters with the herb aioli, I would pair this with a bright Washington Riesling. The Riesling will definitely have enough acidity to stay in balance with the saltiness of the oysters, and its tangerine and other citrus fruit flavors will definitely make the oysters themselves taste lively and just a more heightened flavor. Also, the spices in the breading of the fried oysters will definitely enhance the wine's sweetness as well. I would also recommend maybe adding just a squeeze of lemon to the oysters, as this will definitely enhance the dish and also complement yet not overwhelm the wine. The oyster dish would also pair nicely with an unoaked California Chardonnay and match on the basis of the buttery flavor with the breading of the oysters and the flavor intensity of the dish and the aioli, while also complementing the mineral taste of the oysters. For the Riesling, I would recommend it from Iroka, the Riesling from Columbia Valley in 2018, and the Williams Celium 2019 unoaked Chardonnay from the Russian River Valley. For the artisan cheese and meat board with the apricots, honeycomb, and grilled French bread, I would recommend a Chenin Blanc. The high acidity and fruity notes of a dry Chenin Blanc pairs well with fresh cheeses and salty meats, and the acidity of this wine will cut through the rich and creamy layer in the mouth, and the artisan cheeses and meats will just heighten the taste of the wine. The tannins of the wine will also interact with the high protein and high fat meats on the board. If the cheese course is given after the entree, I would recommend a port wine. The combination of the honeycomb and apricots provide a really great way to serve something a little sweeter with just more acidity and flavors of dried fruits. And the saltiness of the cheese will contrast with the sweetness of the port, specifically with the artisan blue vein cheeses. For this Chenin Blanc, I would recommend the Spire Seaward Chenin Blanc from South Africa, and the port wine that I would recommend is the Graham's 10-year Tawny Port. Wine can serve as a refreshment to accompany certain foods, so highly seasoned or spicy foods might need a refreshing wine just to cool and cleanse the palate for the next bite. So for the spicy red curry mussels with the lemongrass, coconut milk, and Thai lime leaf, I would recommend a Riesling from the Alsace region of France just to create a refreshing backdrop. The curry mussels will also pair well with a dry white wine that has crisp flavors such as a Pinot Gris. An Oregon Pinot Gris would complement the meal well and still allow for the flavor of the mussels to shine through, and the richer interpretations of the Pinot Gris would do well against the flavorful curry. For the Riesling, I would recommend it from Ande K Riesling Scalusberg Grand Cru in 2018. And for the Pinot Gris, I would recommend the King Estate Pinot Gris from Willamette Valley in Oregon from 2018. For the Spanish octopus with the fennel, fennel pollen, sun-dried tomato, and Pedro Jimenez, I would pair this dish with an Italian Sauv Blanc. The depth and strong flavor and acidity of the Sauv Blanc will be able to cut through the flesh of the octopus and provide a contrast to the mineral taste of the seafood dish. The grassiness of the Sauv Blanc will also pair well with the fennel and fennel pollen with the octopus. You could also pair this dish with the Falangina from Campania, since the sun-dried tomatoes are pungent with flavor and sweet tart with acidity. The Falangina is medium in body and has a slight mouth coating quality so that it doesn't feel too heavy when mixed with this light dish. Falangina has acidity to complement the sun-dried tomatoes, as well as herbal top notes that would blend perfectly with the fennel. For the Sauv Blanc, I would recommend the Tiare Sauvignon Blanc from Collio, Italy in 2019. And for the Falangina, it would be the Quinto de Chino Irpinia from Campania in 2020. For the braised grass-fed beef short rib with the pearl barley, butter glazed French peas, whipped potatoes, French horseradish, bordelaise sauce, and crispy onions, I would pair this with a Washington Cabernet Sauvignon. This cab is medium, full-bodied with dry hints of cherry, vanilla, cinnamon, cocoa, and a bit of earthiness. And it's soft on the palate, but has a velvety tannins with aromatic finish that will definitely offer a great contrast to the savory and meaty rib flavors, with the tannins making the meat taste more tender. You could also go with an Australian Shiraz. This wine would definitely similarly offer a nice contrast to the savory and grilled flavors of the ribs, with the jammy, blackberry, and vanilla notes. I would also add a little bit of fresh cracked pepper to enhance the taste of the ribs as it merges with the Shiraz. For the Cab Sav, I would recommend it from Genesis Hogue. And for the Shiraz, the two-hand Shiraz from Bella's Garden from Australia. The Atlantic salmon with the bok choy, Parmesan risotto, mushroom tea, and white truffle cloud. I would pair this with a Oregon Pinot Noir. The high acidity and lower tannin in the cooler climate Pinot would definitely match well with the fattiness and texture of the salmon. This meal with the mushroom and Parmesan would also pair nicely with an aged white wine, such as an Italian Riesling. These style of wines get white truffle aromas and a very earthy quality too, which would definitely further bring out the flavors of the vegetable and the white truffle cloud on the dish. For the Pinot Noir, I would recommend it from Origins from 2019 in Oregon. And from the Riesling, the Ettore Germano Harazu Lahe Riesling from Italy in 2016. For the chicken breast with the butter glaze, broccolini, organic yellow grits, and green peppercorn sauce, I would pair this with the Pinot Noir. The light red wine is a good match because it's not heavy, and unlike a Cab Sav, it doesn't have a high tannic content. And its acidity and just earthy flavor complements the flavors of the roasted chicken really well. Also, a Chardonnay would also go nicely with this meal, as the buttery flavors in the dish would definitely be heightened, and the creamy, just smooth texture and freshness of the Chardonnay would make it perfect to have with the butter kind of roasted chicken. It is definitely best to stick with the unoaked or lightly oaked version of Chardonnay, because the oaked version can kind of be too powerful and just too overpowering for the meal. So for the Pinot Noir, I would recommend it. A Pinot from Australia, from Annan, Tasmania, in 2016. And for the Chardonnay, from Sonoma Coast in California, from Riata in 2018. For the heritage pork chop with the baby carrots, basmati rice, and argol dulce sauce, I would pair this with a Pinot Noir. A Pinot Noir is definitely light but subtle earthy red wine with silky flavors of strawberry or raspberry and cherry, and this would just add a refreshing contrast to the savory but slightly sweet flavors of a pork chop. The velvety acidic nature of Pinot Noir also heightens the subtle pork flavors, making them taste more pronounced. Also, with low to medium amounts of tannin, the Pinot would not overpower the tender flavors of the pork chop. This pork chop would also pair well with a Zinfandel. This wine has jam and just berry flavors with a touch of smoke and a slight amount of acidity that makes the dry wine taste slightly sweet, which would definitely complement the sweet pork flavors. For the Pinot Noir, I'd recommend it from Carmel Road, Monterey Pinot Noir from Monterey County in 2017. And for the Zinfandel from Hartford and the Russian River from Sonoma County in California. For the Tap House burger with the lettuce, tomato, pickle, bacon, jam, melted cheese, and fries, this would be a nice charred burger. So I would recommend a Oregon Pinot Noir or a French Syrah. Both of these wines will have subtle tannins and earthy characteristics that would complement the charred meat, and they also have peppery undertones that would add flavor to the simple kind of style burger. For the Pinot Noir, I would recommend the Four Graces Pinot Noir from Willamette Valley in 2019, and the Syrah from France, the Double L Morgan, 2018. For the North Carolina Rainbow Trout with the butter glazed root vegetables, wild rice, and brown butter, I would recommend a Sauv Blanc or a Chardonnay. The Sauv Blanc would match the acidity of the dish with the wine and the grassiness of the wine with the character of the vegetables and wild rice. But the Chardonnay from California is a cool climate wine with some oak that would have sufficient acid and just match the body and the fattiness of the trout. Further, the butteriness of the Chardonnay would definitely complement the butter glaze of the veggies and the brown butter on the trout, further just bringing out that butter flavor in each. Also, just the sweetness of the fish will contrast well with the light acidity of the Chardonnay. The Sauv Blanc that I recommend is from Lee Dit in California, and the Chardonnay that I recommend is Stag's Leap Winery from Napa Valley in 2020. For the fettuccine dish with the baby spinach, local mushrooms, applewood smoked bacon, and rosemary cream, I would recommend a New Zealand Sauv Blanc. In terms of flavor, the pasta and wine would have a match based on similar spice levels and intensity levels, and the spice levels might be the same in both, but the wine is just slightly more intense while the pasta flavor is just slightly more persistent. The main flavors in the food are lightly smoky and just cheesy, while the main flavor in the wine is more herbal and grass, which would definitely create a contrast match between them. On the other hand, a Chardonnay with some oakiness would create a match in terms of body, smoke, and oak. And this would also just offer a little tannin to provide a good match with the dairy fat in the crema sauce. For the Sauv Blanc, I'd recommend it from Smith and Sheath Crew Sauvignon from New Zealand. And the Chardonnay would be the Dutton Goldfield Chardonnay from Dutton Ranch in 2017.